of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tristero. Chapter 37, Intervention, Part 2. By the time that 800 fell upon them, any awkwardness had been thoroughly forgotten. The new cafe space looked better than he could have hoped for, and as he gazed at the cat enclosure, he couldn't have been more pleased by the little personal touches each pro, thoroughly thrilled by the opportunity, had left. Lau Mike Knight had each added a little stenciled cat doodle, one on a cloud, one with a microphone, and one inside a love heart, and signed their aliases under each blue, yellow, and purple work of art. Nezu had done his paw handprints. He'd also written, "Live happy, drink tea," under his handiwork. Sir Night-Eye, who'd blown them all away with his swift, efficient swipes of finer paintbrushes he'd magicked up from somewhere, on the other hand, had created a lifelike cat with All Might's smile and unusual hairstyle in yellows, blues, reds, whites, and blacks with block texted plus Ultnya in a domed banner over the top of it. Izuku and Katsuki would lose their minds when they saw it, wouldn't they? The tallest and broadest of their number, however, had simply used the cat stencils to create a kindle of kittens in different colors, surrounding a bigger black cat, his smile fond as he regarded them. "Wow, that's so cute, All Might Sama!" Midnight had breathed, the pair having a selfie in front of it before she grabbed him and shoved him next to the blonde. A chuckle pulled from his lips when the other balked when he dumped into that wide dwarf chest. "That's even cuter!" The only female pro tittered, her friends similarly snapping photos and giggling like school kids. "Ha, ha, ha," he huffed. "Knock it off," he chuckled. "Our symbol of peace will get his approval rating dropped if any news hound sees him stuck with a scruffy mess like me." He snickered, his eyes rolling. "Now come on, since none of you selfless hero types will let me pay you for your hard work, let's go have some cake," he offered before pulling away and walking back into the cafe proper. All of the dust sheaves had been tidied away by the older pros. President Mike had hoovered up Midnight's favorite duster in hand, had cleared the shelves and sills, whilst Loud Cloud had used his quirk to collect any finer particles and ranged them outside, so everything was ready for the first round of inspections tomorrow. "Does anyone have any preferences?" "I'd rather you not call yourself a scruffy mess, thank you," Night-Eye said primly as they followed him and slid into booths or chairs. "You're a very fine young man, Aizawa-kun," he added firmly, snorting, because really, he was covered in paint, his hair was a mess, and because worrying about what you looked like was outside of ensuring that you met hygiene standards was logical, he wasn't what anyone would call attractive, surely. Shouta skirted around the privacy gate and into the service area, his legs walking to the wide, chilled display case. "Dude, you are not seriously disagreeing!" President Mike called those mesmerizing eyes appraising him over the rims of his white-framed amber-lensed glasses, which everyone else regarding him just as bewilderedly. "You're like a 12 out of 10, my man, and that's just from an aesthetic point of view," he stated. "If you say so," he replied brazily, his hands grabbing the 3 smaller cakes he'd whipped up for today. Victoria sponge with raspberry jam and whipped cream, chocolate mud pie, and a lemon lavender drizzle cake, and placed them on the counter before rooting around for plates and bamboo forks. "No, Shouta, come on, surely the people you've dated have told you as much, Midnight tittered fondly, her smirk devious, whilst the majority of the men balked. "There's a trail of broken hearts leading to this establishment door, isn't there, Well," he blinked, his hands removing the protective plastic cloches and setting them aside. "I've never dated anyone," he said before with a blink. He watched the younger pros flail, whilst Albert coughed quite violently into his head. "Oh, shut the front door!" the shorter of the 2 blondes demanded, his paint-streaked hands smacking down upon the table. Looking from him to the cafe's main point of entry, he felt his right brow cock incredulously. "It is closed." Turning his attention back to the hysterical people who'd clearly breathed in too many fumes, Shouta started to slice up the cake. he'd share out what was left with the Tatstoons and Inko. Whilst All Might continued to wheeze, Sir Nine-Eye shook his head. Nezu looked just as bewildered as he did, and the local pros stared at him with gaping mouths. What was the big deal? So he'd never been on a date. So he'd never asked anyone or been asked. It wasn't that strange, was it? Didn't their country have a declining population rate for a reason? No, just no. Midnight said, her deceptively powerful form standing as she pointed her feather duster at him, her expression scarily intense. That is not fair or right, she told him hotly. You deserve better. Look, sure, she barreled on. I don't know who or what your type is. I don't know if you're ace or a romantic. I don't know if you're not some deity too pure for human courtship, she furthered, her face becoming more and more confused. But you, sir, are going to have a date because you deserve to be pampered, she told him firmly. I don't have time for... You don't work on Sundays! Snapping his head to All Might, who, for reasons unknown to him, blushed all the way to his hairline. Even his ears had flushed. Shouta puffed out a defeated breath. Well, he wasn't wrong, was he? Okay, he said, his tone incredulously, a knowing smirk gripping on his features. Just where will you find someone who wants to waste one of their only days off of work taking me somewhere?
You're looking at her.
She winked, her eyes sparkling.
What? Midnight? No fair!
Loud Cloud sputtered, his lips pouting. I said that I wanted to ask him out.
Not before I did!
President Mike cut in, those wildly gesticulating ants now shooting finger guns at him.
I've been spitting since he knocked me on my ass, yo! We had a moment!
He argued hotly.
Well, if the three of you are throwing your hats into the ring, then I think it's only fair that Almight and myself be considered.
Sir Night-Eye murmured, whilst long, lean fingers pushed his designer frames up the elegant bridge of his nose, those gold eyes flashing keenly as All Might let out something akin to a squeal as he nodded enthusiastically. Then, and it was as though he wasn't even in the room now, the five of them started to work out schedules as he stared, his expression nonplussed. This all had to be some kind of weird delirium. Maybe he'd been the one who breathed in too many fumes? Perhaps he was passed out on the floor somewhere and this was all a dream? What was happening exactly?
Well, if it's any consolation, Aizawa-kun,
Nezu said. His short form stood before the display case and looking up at him with a sneaky grin, whilst the others grew more animated with their schemes.
I only want to port you for the school I'll be becoming principal of next year, you know.
By 1830, he'd finally waved to the group off and made his way upstairs, but only after having to assure them for the 100th time that he'd not been offended by their plotting and planning. In fact, if he was honest with himself, he was actually kind of flattered. He knew that Inko, along with Mitsuki and her friends, because he expected the news to travel fast, would get a real kick out of him actually going on a date with each of the bros. He'd flat out refused Nezu, though. The crazy genius had offered to
fast-track your hero license. I mean, that nothing would stop you from acting valiantly if and when you needed to. Oh, and I'd only ask for a few Sunday sessions for our talented young people, too.
God, sure, it had been incredibly generous of him to ask, he told the man as much, but his heart was here, with the community he was building. The shortest pro, however, clearly undeterred and sporting a certain glint in his eye, had simply winked at him whilst cryptically saying,
The offer still stands and will stand in the future, my friend. I'll see you gracing our halls one day, I'm sure.
What a day! Although, his feet padding up the stairs with cake and drinks in hand upon a wide tray, he couldn't say that he wasn't appreciative of the attention, and he told them all bluntly that he'd only go through with their imaginations so long as no one was going to take things too seriously. For regardless of her forthright assumptions, Midnight was right. He wasn't sure what his sexuality was, or if he even had one at all. It had never bothered him, and he wasn't lying to himself or others when he said that he'd been too busy to consider such things, because he had been. He was. But perhaps they were right. Maybe he was missing out on something. However, he didn't want to test the waters if any of the people he valued as friends would become upset if he did want to start something as important as a relationship with only one of them, or forget the whole thing altogether. They'd promised that their intentions, to quote All Might, were completely chivalrous and in the interest of broadening your horizons and spoiling your rotten Shouta-kun. How irrational. He's coming! Shush! Blinking out of his thoughts. Ingo would have texted him if something untoward was happening during their decorating, wouldn't she? The cafe owner reached the top of the stairs, ditched his flip-flops, and walked into the living area where the teens, Tots, and oldest Midoriya were awaiting him. They all looked thoroughly accomplished, and he couldn't help but smile at them. "Are you all done?" he asked whilst placing the tray onto the coffee table. "Oh, yes, you gotta come see," Hitoshi squealed, he and Izuku dashing forward to grab his hands and pull him into their new living space with a happily tearful Inko and two preening teens following behind him. From the streaks of paint covering them all, he suspected that there'd been one or two playful color fights throughout the afternoon. Adorable. "Okay, close your eyes, Shoni." Chuckling and doing as instructed, he allowed the youngest boys to guide him into the room at the end of the now 4-bedroom apartment, the one that Tomura had claimed for himself. Ta-da! Opening his eyes, Shouta took in the dove-gray walls before gasping at the RPG-inspired murals scattered across them, his brows reaching for his hairline. "My God," he breathed before walking over to view each one because, in various styles of fantasy costume, he saw everyone of his study group, the teens himself, and a few people he didn't recognize. A gaggle of the students were outside a tavern counting coins. Then they were on a quest. Tomura was decked out in knight's gear. Dabi was a mage with flaming hands. Ejiro was a dragon. Katsuki a barbarian. Izuku, Denki, and the girls were similarly decked in such medieval attire as scouts, sorcerers, and explorers, whilst Hitoshi was a wizard, his form triumphantly posed with his foot stomping down on a comically crying, definitely defeated Mr. Compress. He, however, featured in several scenes. In one, he was a vendor selling magical cakes. In another, he was a healer helping the sick, but the majority of them showed him defeating foes and standing protectively in front of the younger children. Inko and the other mothers were, however, shown too, but sat happily around a round table with Mimi-chan and her girls, making up a tapestry of their adventures. There were cats, manga-styled, chibi, realistic, everywhere. "Isn't it the most amazing thing you've ever seen?" the Emerald Air boy said, his eyes streaming tears. "Domini drew it up and let us color it in," he advised, shifting his gaze to the sheepish flame quirk user who was blushing pink across his high cheekbones whilst Tomura leaned against him affectionately. Shouta struggled. "We have got to get you into some kind of college art course," he stated frankly. "You've got the skills to make it in all kinds of industries," he reasoned, his hands gesturing around. "I mean, my God, I shouldn't be hiding you away in my cafe of all places." He huffed, his eyes alight with pride. "Oh, you think so?" the other said a little bashfully. "This is just something I like to do, you know." Walking over and pulling the younger man into a hug, the eatery owner sighed when the gesture was returned. "I don't want to push you into anything," he told him gently. "But if you do want to pursue this as a career, then I'll back you every step of the way, all right?" he offered. "Bankruptcy," the other huffed as they released each other. "Thanks, I'll think about it." He smiled. "Good." He nodded before looking to the other young man. "Come on, surely this is enough to get you to stay with us." He grinned, smiling shyly, his own face pinked. Tomura rubbed the back of his neck.
"Well, I thought this could be used by the smalls, as well as me," he said. "But maybe I will start to stay over more. It's just..."
"I understand." He cut in kindly. "You have other family to consider. We get that," he stated whilst Hitoshi hugged his leg and Dabi huffed. "You will always have a home here, though, all right?" Flushing a little darker and nodding, Shouta then allowed the 6-year-olds to lead him out of the space and into the room his oldest ward would be using, Similarly to the chamber they'd just left, the walls were in blues and grays. However, on the wall his futon would be pressed against, another mural rested. "Wow," he murmured. "What kind of flower is that?" he asked. "I'm not really sure." The scarred teen sighed, those turquoise eyes somehow sad and fond at the same time. "But they're my mom's favorite," he said slowly. "All of my memories of her have them in it," he furthered before with a little sigh. "But come on, there's still more to see." He gestured before briskly leaving. Sharing a quick look at Tomra, who softly shook his head, and Inko, who was wiping her eyes, he and his half-pint guides ventured out of the room, through the archway, and into Hitoshi's room, the iris-haired boy eagerly tugging him inside. "It's Mommy, see?" The room was in soft lavenders and mauve, whilst over the top sleeping spot, a gorgeous scene of Kimiko smiling and surrounded by orchids in varying shades, cats and butterflies, and onigiri burgeoning like something out of a dream. "Isn't Dabini so clever?" the kid asked whilst he ran over to it, his little hands tracing one of the beautiful petals reverently. "Inko-san did a real good job with all the shady, too." "Oh, Toshi-chan, it was my honor, truly," the overwhelmed woman offered, whilst nodding vigorously as she and her son struggled not to set their waterworks off any stronger. "Oh, you are such an incredibly talented young man," she furthered before swamping the flame quirk user in a bone-crushing hug. "Oh, thanks," he wheezed, whilst Satoshi giggled, and Tomra, his grin devious, started to snap a plethora of photographs. Damn! He'd have to start looking into winter courses for the kid. He could make an excellent living for himself doing something that he enjoyed now, couldn't he? "Well, if we ever do need another source of income, then I'm turning our home into a gallery," he announced, his arms folding determinedly, his tone decisive. Wow! The cat enclosure was going to look fantastic by the time that his young friend finished with it too. "Okay, I think all of this hard work deserves some—" "Oh? You didn't think that your room would be left out, did you, Kid Dad?" Blinking owlishly, Shouta regarded Dobby with a wide smile. "Really?" he asked, his tone delighted. "Really," he says. The younger snorted, a talented, now multicolored hand reaching for his and pulling him along. "Look, if you don't like it and want it covered up, I can—" "Dobby," he cut in, his fingers squeezing the ones that had captured his own. "I'll love it, because you made it for me," he assured, his smirk a little rueful. "Now who doesn't love themselves as they should, huh?" Smiling back, not a hint of snark or deflection to be seen, the younger man continued to guide him into his room, where his futon had been pushed away from its usual resting place. "My God," he breathed, for there, looking back at him, was a big black cat. The detail was amazing. Sporting a cook's cap and apron, its proud form sat next to a mug which had #1 Cat Dad on it, with cakes of various descriptions haloed all around it. "We need to get this onto our official branding," he murmured, "and I'm going to have to up your pay."